Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Claude Lévi-Strauss' 1950 publication, The Elementary Structures of Kinship, represents far more than a mere contribution to the anthropological study of family and marriage. It stands as a monumental work of intellectual architecture, a vast and audacious attempt to map the foundational logic of human sociality itself, emerging from the intellectual ferment of mid-century Paris, having been shaped by the crucible of wartime exile and the heady interdisciplinary encounters of New York. This text proposed a radical reorientation for the human sciences. It sought to uncover the universal, unconscious structures of the mind by analyzing the seemingly bewildering diversity of global kinship systems. The book's central ambition was to demonstrate that the passage from nature to culture, the very threshold of humanity, is marked by a single, decisive act, the establishment of the incest taboo, which in Lévi-Strauss' formulation becomes a positive rule of reciprocal exchange. With this thesis, he transformed the study of kinship from a descriptive cataloguing of social arrangements into a quest for the deep grammar of human thought, a project whose reverberations would shape the intellectual landscape for decades to come. The genesis of the elementary structures lies in a rich French sociological tradition, most notably in the work of Émile Durkheim and his nephew, Marcel Mauss. From Durkheim, Lévi-Strauss inherited the conviction that social phenomena constitute a distinct order of reality, a system of collective representations governed by its own laws. From Mauss' seminal 1925 essay, The Gift, he absorbed the profound insight that exchange is the bedrock of social life. Mauss had shown that the circulation of objects in archaic societies was a total social fact, binding groups together through a continuous cycle of obligation to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. Lévi-Strauss performed a breathtaking conceptual leap, arguing that the most fundamental exchange of all involved something far more precious than material goods. The primary currency of social cohesion, he contended, was women. He posited that the universal prohibition of incest possessed a functional explanation that was incomplete on its own. Its true significance was structural. The taboo compels a man to relinquish his own mother, sister, or daughter and seek a partner from another social group. This renunciation is the engine of sociality, forcing families to move from a state of biological isolation into a network of alliances. The negative injunction, "You shall not marry a close relative," creates a positive mandate: you must give your relatives to others, and you are entitled to receive relatives in return. Culture, therefore, begins where the arbitrary rules of exchange supersede the contingencies of biology. At the heart of this grand theory lie two principal models of exchange, which Lévi-Strauss articulated with an almost geometric elegance. The first, restricted exchange, describes a system of direct reciprocity, typically between two groups or moieties. Group A gives a woman to Group B, and Group B reciprocates by giving a woman to Group A. This model, which he associated primarily with societies practicing cross-cousin marriage where a man marries his mother's brother's daughter or his father's sister's daughter, creates a stable, symmetrical, but ultimately closed social universe. The second, more dynamic model is generalized exchange. In this system, the reciprocity is indirect and circular. Group A gives a woman to Group B, which gives a woman to Group C, which in turn gives a woman to Group A, completing the circle. This arrangement, exemplified by societies practicing patrilateral cross-cousin marriage where a man marries his mother's brother's daughter, forges a wider, more expansive social solidarity. It requires a greater leap of faith, a trust that the initial gift will eventually be returned through a long chain of social transactions. To analyze these systems, Lévi-Strauss introduced his concept of the atom of kinship, a minimal structural unit composed of four terms: a brother, his sister, the sister's husband, and their son. This irreducible constellation captures the essential relationship of alliance, where the avuncular relationship, the bond between a man and his maternal uncle, becomes the critical pivot upon which the entire system of exchange turns. The maternal uncle is the one who gives his sister, the boy's mother, away. The relationship between Anan and his wife's brother is the conduit through which social life. The methodology propelling this analysis was as revolutionary as its conclusions. During his exile in New York, Lévi-Strauss encountered the structural linguistics of Roman Jakobson and the Prague School. He was captivated by Jakobson's analysis of phonemes, the minimal sound units of language. Jakobson had demonstrated that phonemes derive their meaning purely from their relationship with other phonemes within a system, defined by a set of binary oppositions, such as voiced versus unvoiced or consonant versus vowel. Lévi-Strauss saw in this a powerful blueprint for anthropology. He proposed that kinship systems, like languages, were symbolic systems generated by an unconscious mental logic. The diverse customs and rules found across the globe were surface phenomena, analogous to speech, which could be reduced to a finite set of underlying structural principles, a universal grammar. His use of ethnographic data, particularly from Aboriginal Australian and Southeast Asian societies, was therefore instrumental. He treated their complex marriage rules and section systems as vast, intricate logical puzzles. He pored over the data of his predecessors, searching for the binary oppositions and reciprocal relationships that would reveal the hidden armature of the system. This formalist approach, which treated human beings and their relations as variables in a vast symbolic equation, was a stark departure from the ethnographic functionalism of British anthropologists like A.R. Radcliffe Brown, who focused on how institutions served the practical needs of social integration. Lévi-Strauss was pursuing something far more abstract, the timeless, universal architecture of the human spirit. The publication of the Elementary Structures of Kinship sent an immediate shockwave through the anthropological world. It inaugurated alliance theory as a formidable intellectual counterpoint to the prevailing descent theory championed by the British school, where scholars like Mayor Fortes and E. Ens Pritchard had centred their analyses on unilineal descent groups, tracing lineage and inheritance as the primary organising principles of society. Lévi-Strauss shifted the entire axis of inquiry toward the rules of marriage and the alliances they forged. The ensuing debate was fierce and generative. The British anthropologist Edmund Leach, in his provocative 1961 work Rethinking Anthropology, engaged directly with Lévi-Strauss formalism, both embracing its potential for model building and cautioning against its tendency to create elegant systems that floated free of empirical reality. He cheekily suggested that Lévi-Strauss models were like the work of a brilliant engineer designing a machine that looked beautiful on paper, but might fail to function in the messy world of human practice. The book's influence, however, quickly transcended disciplinary boundaries, becoming a cornerstone of the broader structuralist movement that would dominate French intellectual life. Thinkers like the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, a philosopher Michel Foucault, and the literary critic Roland Barthes all drew inspiration from Lévi-Strauss' method, applying the search for deep, unconscious structures to their own fields of inquiry. The idea that culture could be read as a text, its meaning derived from the interplay of its symbolic elements, became a central tenet of post-war thought. Yet, for all its breathtaking scope and intellectual power, the grand edifice of the elementary structure soon revealed significant fissures. Most persistent critiques came from ethnographers, who found the lived reality of kinship to be far more fluid and complex than Lévi-Strauss' crystalline models allowed. Societies stubbornly refused to fit neatly into the categories of restricted or generalized exchange. Individuals negotiated, manipulated, and broke rules for personal or political gain, a dimension of human agency largely absent from the structuralist schema. The most meticulous and damaging critique came from Rodney Needham, a British anthropologist who, over several decades, systematically dismantled the empirical foundations of alliance theory. Needham demonstrated that Lévi-Strauss' use of ethnographic data was frequently selective and that the very categories he employed, such as prescriptive marriage rules, were often analytical fictions imposed upon a more ambiguous social reality. A second, and profoundly important, line of criticism emerged from feminist scholars. They pointed out that in Lévi-Strauss' model, women appear as passive signs, conduits of communication between male-dominated groups. Their own desires, strategies, and perspectives are rendered invisible. The system is predicated on the exchange of women by men, a formulation that, while perhaps descriptively accurate for some patriarchal societies, was elevated to a universal principle of human culture, a way that many found deeply problematic. The work was seen as a product of a specific historical and intellectual moment, one that reified a male-centered view of the social world as an immutable, universal structure. Despite these formidable and valid challenges, the enduring legacy of the elementary structures of kinship is undeniable. Its value lies perhaps less in the enduring accuracy of its specific models of exchange and more in the profound reconceptualization of its subject matter. Lévi-Strauss irrevocably demonstrated that kinship is a symbolic system, a language through which societies articulate their most fundamental ideas about identity, difference, and social order. He compelled anthropology to look beyond surface-level descriptions and to ask deeper questions about the cognitive and symbolic underpinnings of social life. Even in its errors, the book was immensely productive, stimulating decades of debate and research that refined and enriched our understanding of human social organization. It stands as a testament to the power of theoretical ambition, a reminder that the greatest intellectual advances often come from audacious attempts to synthesize vast domains of knowledge into a single, coherent vision. The Elementary Structures of Kinship remains a foundational text, a work of immense erudition and creative genius whose core insight that the logic of culture is a logic of relations continues to echo through the corridors of the human sciences. It taught us that to understand what it means to be human, We must first understand the intricate web of obligations and alliances from which society is woven. The book is an intellectual monument, a flawed but magnificent map of the world that forever changed the way we navigate the terrain of human culture.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.